freelance animator from him.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided I really want to go work at the studio that he used to work at in Chicago. So packed up my bags, went to school in Chicago at Columbia College, which is right downtown. And unfortunately, being a new student, I couldn't get into any animation classes. I had to wait. And so second semester rolls around, and I finally am able to get into the animation. Well, actually, let me step back a second. I went to the head of the animation department. I was like, dude, look, I've been working in animation for a couple years now. Mm-hmm. Get me into this class, you know? And so he made me a TA my first semester.
Oh, nice.
And so, which usually you're, junior or senior to be a TA.
Wow.
And so I realized that unfortunately a lot of schools will hire people for classes that have never done it professionally. Mm-hmm. And so I found that I was teaching the teachers how to teach, and I was there to learn. And so it got really frustrating. I had one teacher that was someone that worked in the field. His name was Luis, and he was a storyboard artist on the VeggieTales movies.
Okay.
He taught me so much about, storyboarding and composition in storyboarding, and how to make the cameras flow through the story. Great guy. Other than that, teachers were fairly nice. They did their best job. It was just unfortunate that these are guys that had never done it professionally before. Mm-hmm. So I, at that point, called down to this studio called, it's no longer around, but it's called Star Tunes.
Okay.
And they had won many Emmy Awards for Animaniacs and Tiny Toons and whatever. They were kind of the studio that Warner Brothers would hire in the States when they wanted like a specific episode to be great, because it was just so expensive to do animation, traditional animation in the States.
Right.
So we would kind of get, handpicked a few episodes. Unfortunately, I missed the last episode of Animaniacs by like a week by the time they hired me. But so I went down there, talked to the guy, showed him the projects I've been working on at school, and this is an hour train ride south of downtown Chicago.
Okay.
So go down there, show him it. I spent maybe 15 minutes with the guy, and he made all these comments, and I wrote them all down. Went home, made all the revisions, called him back 2 weeks later, said, I want to come back down and meet you. And he's like, you were just here. I was like, no, I want to show you what I did. And he's like, all right, it's your 2-hour train ride. I don't care. So go down there. He gives me 15 minutes. I put the tape back in, and he goes, you fixed everything I told you to. And I was like, absolutely. That's why I came down here.
Right.
And I said, look, dude, I'm going to work here. I don't care if I have to scrub your toilets and mop your floors. I'm going to get a job here. So what else do I need to do for you to just hire me? And he goes, all right. Let me call you back. 2 weeks later, he called and said, you're hired.
Wow.
And it was, and it's, you got to have that hunger, and so you always got to keep learning and listening to other artists, even if, you can't look at anyone as really better or worse. Somebody has something to teach you.
Right.
And so I got to spend about 2 years there working on a show called Hysteria for Kids WB. And we did a direct-to-video cartoon called The Crippled Lamb, which is you can find in like any Christian bookstore. I think it's been converted to DVD. I don't own it. We did a show for, I think it was Fox Family. It was the EPA, so it was like it was called Watts on Your Mind, and Watts was spelled like electrical watts, and it was Frankenstein, the doctor, and Igor, and they're kind of running around the castle, turning off lights and that kind of thing, and explaining how to conserve energy.
Sure.
And in a fun monster way. Had a great time there. Unfortunately, all good things come to an end, and the shop kind of like the producer that was doing Animaniacs, Tiny Toons, Tasmania, Hysteria, moved on, and he no longer had that position, and Kids WB took a completely different direction. Pretty much stopped making all these great cartoons. So we were out of work, and it was getting frustrated that, calling in and saying, hey, do you guys need us this week? And they'd be like, no, we don't have any work yet. And so I was just like office temping downtown in Chicago, doing like answering phones if there was a secretary out for the day, or, doing data entry and whatever I could to just keep there close enough. And so while I was there, the guy that was teaching me in Minneapolis had moved here to Atlanta, and he was directing at Crawford Communications at the time. And so I'd called him and said, yeah, we're kind of on this forced vacation thing. And so he's like, hey, why don't you come down and visit me in Atlanta? So came down here, and at the time Crawford had split off the animation department. They were like getting rid of it, so him and two other people kind of bought it and had their own studio in town. And they're still picking up work with like Cartoon Latin America and TNT, things like that. So I came in and was just like, oh my God, there's like something fresh. There's, Cartoon Network's something I haven't worked on yet. There's tons of work here, because at the time, like, all the good animators in town were at Primal Screen. It was like a smaller building, and everyone was just on each other's laps trying to get work done. And it was such a great time to be in Atlanta for an animator. And you could just make so much money and be really proud of the work you're doing. It was so much fun. So after that weekend trip, I went home, packed up my stuff, and came down here with like $200 in my pocket, and slept on my buddy's couch until I could kind of get on my feet, and which it didn't take long. So I started off just kind of grabbing any work I could at his studio, and then made my way into Primal Screen. They threw me right into the mix of things, and I was directing I did the storyboards and was supposed to direct a commercial for Cartoon Network where an animated Yogi Bear comes to work, forgets his ID, and he's walking through the actual lobby of Cartoon Network, and the guards are kind of giving him a hard time, like they don't know who he is. So kind of got started on that, and then I got pulled off of it because they were doing this thing called Cartoon Fridays, where characters like Dexter, the Powerpuff Girls, would come out, and they would say, hey, I'm Dexter, and tonight you're going to see the new episode of Samurai Jack coming up next. And so they were kind of behind schedule with that. And so I left the commercial I was doing to work on the one of Double D from Ed, Edd n Eddy. And so I directed that, animated a good portion of it. So that was great. And then from there, during those projects, I'd met so many people at Cartoon Network from having meetings that I found out about a job opening over there. They were just starting this new thing called Cartoon Orbit, which was a kind of a very early social media for kids, where you'd sign up, create an account, then you'd pick a background, whether it was Powerpuff Girls' bedroom or the Flintstones' front yard or whatever, and then you got these like color form like characters that would animate that you could place on your background, and then you could go look at other kids' backgrounds, and then you could get points. The more time you spent on there, the more points you got, the more characters you could buy. See where this is going. So this was in 2000, so animation on the internet was still kind of getting started. You did have, like Spumco was doing the cartoons, the online cartoons, and they would kind of like stall out. It was like Flash was just getting there.
Yeah.
Well, I had taught myself Flash enough to where these guys were impressed with the history that I had, working with Warner Brothers, and then the fact that I knew how to do Flash and get it in the computer. So they hired me, so I came on as their lead animator. Worked on Orbit for a few years until that started to fizzle out, and then just at that point, CartoonNetwork.com decided they wanted to have an in-house games team because they were farming out all of their Flash games. So I got moved into that group, learned how to do video game stuff, and then that got to a point at the end of '09 where they decided we're not going to do 2D Flash games anymore. We're going to just do one big 3D game a year.
Wow.
And so, unfortunately, I didn't have the experience doing 3D, so I was one of the guys that got cut.
Mm-hmm.
So that turned into back in the freelance pool, calling up my friends at, Primal Screen and Awesome Inc. and, wherever else I could contact. And then I also had some friends out in California that had started their own company to do Flash games. They had all previously worked at Mattel, and Mattel was their biggest client, but they were also picking up work from Disney and Activision and some of those companies out there. And so they jumped at the chance to work with me. And so it's been nice that over the past 5 years now, I've been able to work from home doing work for them. It's between iChat, Skype, and Dropbox. There's no need to actually be in a studio next to somebody.
Yeah. So you don't have to keep moving around the country.
No, I don't have to leave again. I mean, if the right opportunity came along, I'd jump on it. But, it's kind of nice to just... Sometimes I find myself at 1 o'clock in the afternoon still wearing my pajama pants and, haven't taken a shower yet because I haven't had to leave the house. But, at the same time, you have to be good about separating your work from your home life because it's easy to get caught up in working until, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. So you have to have that cutoff. I mean, there's always going to be times where, especially working with someone in California and being in completely different time zones, you got to kind of say, hey, you know what? It's dinner time. I got to go. I know it's mid-afternoon for you, but, if there's something pressing because of a deadline, by all means, I'll jump on the computer. But for the most part, you want to have that separation.
Are you married?
I am.
And you have children?
No children.
Okay. Been married for long?
About 2.5 years.
Okay.
So I have a dog that I treat like a child, but I don't know if that counts.
How long you had your dog?
He came with the woman.
Okay. It was a package deal.
It was a package deal.
Okay.
So.
Because that's like one of before we go further into your freelance experience and story, that is one of the things you have to learn when you're in business for yourself. And you don't have to show up to work at a particular place and clock in or however it goes. And I haven't had much experience with that at all. But you have to structure your day enough, especially if you're married or if you have other personal things you need to take care of. Because it's easy to... We love art. That's how we get into the art thing, because we enjoy it. We have a good time. And it's easy for the day to go by.
Absolutely.
And then when that becomes part of your business, you're thinking that I need to finish this project to get paid because it's part of how you pay your bills and so on. And it's easy to forget people. And when you're married or you have other responsibilities, especially people with kids, you have to learn how to juggle that. You have to learn how to work on a schedule. You have to learn how to give each one thing in your life its time and space. And there's never going to be a balance, never a perfect balance, but it's something that you have to learn to maneuver.
Yes. And it's not always easy. There's always a curveball thrown in there that you're like, this week I got this to do. And it's thankfully, and this was not planned, but my wife happens to be a graphic designer at an ad agency, so she gets it. She knows about deadlines. So like last night I had a 3-hour Skype meeting because we're delivering a game, and we had to go over it and nitpick it and make tiny adjustments. And so granted, I spent half the time just scoping out Facebook and Amazon while I was on the call, because it wasn't... I just had to listen because there wasn't nothing particular for me, but I had to be on it in case something came up. And, and she just sat patiently in the other room with the dog watching TV and, had dinner ready but not cooked yet, just because she understood that, it doesn't happen all the time. And I think that helps. Yeah. If it was all the time, it'd be really annoying, and you just have to,